Hey, how's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to my blog. Alright, okay, so at the end of the last one, I said that this one would be talking about how I utilize humour in my writing. I also said that I wasn't completely certain if I've covered this topic before and that I would check into that. But I've had a lot going on recently and haven't checked into that. So I do apologise if I have covered this topic before. Hopefully, I will say something new this time that I didn't say last time, and you can consider this like a extra. Um, if not, if this is a completely new topic for me, which I'm pretty sure it is, um, then I did a good job. um, so I wouldn't say I was necessarily a humorous writer. I don't go in writing to, I don't write comedy. I know writing comedy is incredibly hard. Um, so it's not something I've ever really looked or thought about attempting. But at the same time, your characters are supposed to represent real people, and people make jokes. They, have a sense of humor. What one character might find hilariously funny, another character might not necessarily appreciate. So you've got to work humor into your story somehow, whether it's sort of a situational humor, whether it's sort of the character's trying to be funny, or whatever. That is something you have to consider when you're writing. Even if you're writing something that is particularly serious, it doesn't completely remove the possibility of humor. I'm not sure if it should, but maybe it's just my way of thinking. I think, there's always got to be a lighter side to everything, and sometimes the humour sort of fits naturally, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily work as cleanly as you would like, in which case then you go for the more serious angle. You have to play each situation by ear, you have to, you know, work out what you're doing with it. So I would say there's more than one way of looking at how I do humour in my writing. And the reason I'm going to say that is sometimes I find great amusement from how I think about the situation that my characters are in. It's not necessary that there is any humour put into these particular moments, or into that particular scene, or into that particular character, or whatever. But when I'm sort of thinking about it, it strikes me as being funny, and then sometimes some of that kind of slips through. I know I sometimes put in lines to sort of deliberately draw attention to what I find funny about the situation. um, and as long as I can get it to work naturally, and as long as it doesn't sound out of character for the character who's saying it or the character who is thinking it, um, then that's one of the ways I sort of slip humour into my writing, is to actually go, hang on a minute, I'm finding this amusing for X, Y, and Z reason, and yes, okay, maybe it's a serious situation, or yes, okay, maybe you could think about this situation in a completely different way. Um, but I want to sort of show that there is a funny side to it, because I think, if you think really hard about most things, not everything, obviously not everything, but most things, sort of see a funny side to it, or something slightly amusing about it. That can sort of change the perception of what's going on, and maybe that's a temporary change, maybe that's just putting a funny thought into somebody's head, maybe that you're doing it not with the aim of breaking the moment, you're sort of doing it with the aim of just putting a different train of thought out there, and then hoping that whoever's reading it and whoever's taking it in is using that to form a larger opinion, using that to sort of channel different ways of thinking about what's going on. So as I said, one of the ways I sort of add humour into my writing is to show the readers kind of what I'm thinking and why I find this situation amusing, even if it's not like a laugh out loud hilarious situation. I mean, I should give an example of this. So like anytime I have a dead character dating a living character, in my head it's like, yeah, that's totally necrophilia. But no, it's not in the true context of it. And I know, you know, the dead character is still a living character within the actual writing. They're not, you know, a corpse, as it were. But in my head, it that amuses me, because I'm slightly twisted. Or I'm sort of looking at it in a way of, well, that's how it can be interpreted. That's how other people might view it if they're critically looking at this situation, or they're looking at this situation from this point of view, or they're looking at the situation from that point of view, and that amuses me. So I might sort of interject some of that in there a little bit, and as I said, that's what I'm sort of talking about. That's what I'm getting at. I sort of see the situation. It's kind of like, you can look at the situation in this way, which is the way it's being presented, and yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. It's, you know, it is what it is. Or you could look at it this way, and actually suddenly the situation becomes hilariously funny. And you know, I'd like just sort of putting little hints that actually maybe it's okay to think about the situation in this completely other way, to interpret it in this completely other way, because everybody's going to interpret things differently anyway. So why not have fun with it? Why not, you know, show that you're okay with people taking things not necessarily in the way that you've intended, but they've taken, you know, something away from it, and whether that's something that amuses them, whether that's something that they, you know, think deeply about later on, that's up to them. But you know, that's one of the ways I use humour, is to sort of almost interject the possibility that people can reinterpret the situation in a different way, and reimagine what's sort of going on, and that it's okay to do that. So the other way that I use humour, as I sort of mentioned before, is sometimes your characters want to tell jokes. Sometimes your characters might have a sense of humour and want to actually tell jokes. What do you do in those situations? You let your characters tell jokes, and sometimes those jokes are going to be lame. It might be sarcastic. They might be, you know, it might be wit. It might be straight up telling a bad joke, which I've been doing a lot of Hyena Boy reading recently, and those boys like telling themselves some bad jokes. And some of them have now gotten surprisingly on the cruder side to what they had been when I was an innocent little girl originally writing the story, not really having that sense of humour. But yeah, sometimes your characters want to joke about, and depending on the personality of the particular character, depends on the type of humour that they're going to have, and that will depend on, you know, the type of jokes that they particularly sort of will be more drawn towards. So, as I mentioned, you know, the boys in Hyena Boy, they're mick takers. They like to tease each other. They like to make fun of each other. They're not mean spirited in it. They, you know, they accept, you know, if they're taking it too far, that's going to have consequences. But that's just how they interact with each other. They like to tease each other, and as I mentioned, also, now that I'm writing it with more of an adult mind view, and their sense of humour has gotten, at least one of the characters' sense of humour, not all of them, one of them has gotten a little bit cruder. But it suits his personality. The little personality traits that I've given him mean that it makes sense that he's more inclined to joking around like this. So I let him joke around like this. He definitely, I think, is the one that sort of straight up tries to tell the most jokes, or tries to be funny. I mean, they try to be funny. And I've kind of gone, okay, I know that they are trying to be funny. I know that in their little group that they find this at least amusing, and they all admit that, you know, they tell bad jokes. That's what they do. And sometimes they're funny and sometimes they're not, but that's not the point. It's the camaraderie, and it's the fact that it works with their personalities. So yeah, the other way I sort of put humour into the story is to let my characters put humour into the story, and it's not necessarily meant to be laugh out loud, hilariously funny for the reader. That's not the point. It's for the characters. It's to show the characters personalities and to show, you know, how they see the world and how they identify with the world. And like I said, Boys and Hyena Boy are very much all about the joke telling and the mick taking and the teasing, but quite often my characters are more towards the wit and the sarcasm and, you know, the very dry humour, which is kind of more a little bit, I think, what I have anyway. But still, like the mick taking and the teasing will still sort of be there because again, it's kind of what I do as well. But it'll tend to lean more towards the sarcasm and you know that sort of sense of things. So yeah, I allow my characters to dictate how they are funny. And they're not trying to be, as I said, funny for the readers. They're trying to be funny for the group that they are with. They're trying to be funny for themselves. They're trying to be funny for the people around them. And sometimes that lands and sometimes that doesn't land within the world. And sometimes that will land for the reader or won't land for the reader. But again, that's not the entire point of why they're doing it. It's to show that they are people within this world, and people generally have a sense of humour because it's a social thing to have. So yeah, so I think, and I've said so many times in the last few moments, I will say it once more, get back on track. So I think the way I view how I write humour and the way I view humour within my writing and what I utilise with humour is my own dark amusement at the situation and sort of showing that it's okay to view a situation in more than one way, because, you know, rational human beings do. That there's no, you know, black and white doesn't exist. There's a whole world of grey, which I've mentioned so many times in so many of my previous blogs. But the other reason is to allow my characters to have a sense of humour, to allow my characters to socialise and joke and get on with each other in the ways that suit them best. And not every situation is going to call for your characters to be joking around, and sometimes your characters are going to take those jokes too far. Sometimes they're not necessarily going to take them as far as the reader might like, but it's to be true to the character, to the spirit of the character, to find what their sense of humour is and to go and run with that. And yeah, so yeah, that's how I do humour, and I hope that's made sense. Next time, according to my lovely calendar, I'm going to be talking about timelines. I need to make some decisions as to what I mean when I'm saying talking about timelines. I think I know what I meant when I wrote that, but I may need to have a think about what I meant when I wrote that. Okay, so yeah, next time we'll be talking about timelines. I hope I've worked out what I'm saying when I get to it. And I will see you guys next time. See ya. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my others, and if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. See ya!